Wordle used to be one of the most popular games around. Then it disappeared. Why? Why did Wordle die? Wordle was once a very popular game, but now everyone has moved on to bigger and better things. What is the reason for this? Do you think it's because of a lack of functionality? Is it too difficult to play? Maybe it's because word games are no longer all that exciting. Wordle took the world by storm, and if that's hard to believe, then consider that it was only launched in October of 2021. That's right, it's not even a year old as of the date of this video, and yet it's already gone viral, gained tens of millions of players, been sold for millions of dollars, and then forgotten about. But if you're one of the few people who doesn't have Wordle muted on Twitter, here's what the game was. Guess a 5-letter word in 6 tries. That's it, that's the whole game. You start by guessing a word, any word, and letters not in the word turn gray. Letters that match the final word but are in the wrong location turn yellow. And letters in the final word in the correct place turn green. It was a free-to-play game. No ads, no in-app purchases, and available to play on the web, on iOS, or on Android. It was created by Josh Wardle, hence the punny name Wordle, and he made it for his partner Palak Shah. Here it is, the face that launched a billion tweets. Palak Shah was fascinated with games like the New York Times Spelling Bee and Crossword. And Josh Wardle worked as a Reddit software engineer and had previously created things for Reddit like The Button and r/place. Well, Josh took 2 old games, Jotto, a game from the 50s that is essentially the same game as Wordle except competitive. You and your opponent choose words for each other to figure out and then see who can do it the fastest. And also a TV show called Lingo, which took Jotto, kept it competitive, gave people the first letter of the word, and also added in bingo because it was the 80s and they were wild and crazy like that. Wordle dropped the bingo, dropped the competitive nature, and put it all online. But of course, that alone isn't enough. So how did Wordle become a world popular game? Wordle took the world by storm thanks to a confluence of circumstances, each reason equally responsible for the eventual success of Wordle. We'll look at the eventual failure of Wordle shortly, but first, why did it succeed? First, and perhaps most equal amongst equals, is the tweets. I wasn't joking when I said Wordle is one of the most blocked terms on Twitter. Everyone was posting their Wordle scores, and most probably someone's Wordle score tweet is how you first came across Wordle. Someone tweeted their scoreboard and you didn't know what it meant, except that it said Wordle 202/6 followed by a grid of nonsensical gray, yellow, and green squares. It's essentially another language, and as you know by now, this kind of exclusive in-language is exactly the type of thing that makes you feel like you're part of the in-crowd. If you know, you know, and so on. It creates a psychological want to be part of the know. But that's not the only thing about the tweets, because if it was just pure guerrilla marketing, that wouldn't be enough. The tweets also tell a story to anyone who knows Wordle. The story of the emoji, which is understandable in an immediate way. You can show any person who's ever played Wordle one of those emoji grids, and they just get it. They understand the story immediately. See, it's not just a high score. It's not just a meaningless series of numbers or a number 1 victory royale picture, which ultimately tells the viewer that you did win, but it doesn't tell the story of the game. That your trio was knocked out and you took out another team and then rebooted your squad at the edge of the storm to come back for the win. No, it just says you won. But the Wordle emojis tell that story. It's a high score that tells the story of luck or frustration or failure. And it does this while remaining completely spoiler-free. You can see other people's stories. You can experience their frustration, their elation, their sadness, their disappointment. And then you can go and experience your own story without being spoiled. And that spoiler freeness is important because the next reason that Wordle saw success, you only get one chance. Every day the puzzle changes, but it's only one puzzle per day. Just one 2-minute game of Wordle, and then you're locked out until tomorrow. At midnight, the word would change for everyone, and then you could play again. This creates a sense of scarcity. It leaves you wanting to play more, but being unable to do so. And like P.T. Barnum always told you, you gotta leave them wanting more. Both of these two things, the stories of the tweets and the fact that you would only get one shot, combine to create a fun social challenge, which is the third reason that Wordle was successful. Who could get the word in the least guesses? Who could keep the longest streak going? The community could have things to argue about. If you get the word in one guess, are you a cheater? Are you a lying, dirty cheater? Are you the worst kind of cheating, lying cheater? Or if you get the word on the 6th guess, well, you know, a win's a win. 6 out of 6 is still a win, just the same as 2 out of 6. Plus, you got to feel so very, very smart about it all, because that's really one of the big things about this game. It masquerades as a game of intelligence. You have to have a large vocabulary, right? You need to know a lot of words and be able to quickly catalog that huge brain full of words to determine exactly which word it is. It's very thinky. However, Wordle is more like code breaking than crosswords, more luck than analysis, yet it feels different. If you figure out the word, you feel smart. And then you get to go and post that in your friend group, in your Telegram groups, spam it on Discord, and show other people how smart you are. And then you get to see their emojis and see how dumb they are, at least until tomorrow, when the word is rebus, and now you're the dunce in the group. The fourth reason is memes. Yes, memes. So many memes. Anytime something becomes memed, it becomes relatable and also generally increases in popularity. It's a kind of brand recognition you just can't buy. This helped drive Wordle into true virality, and going viral is something that is difficult. Trust me, I'm a YouTuber. I live to go viral, and there's nothing better for it than memes. The memes that came out of Wordle drove it to the next level of success. The fifth reason for increasing growth of Wordle is a mix of memes, code breaking, and influencers. At some point, some brilliant YouTuber realized that Wordle was a trendy thing. So, unlike me, they made videos about Wordle while it was still popular, a truly revolutionary thought, and made videos about strategies. And this sparked a whole new kind of public discussion. Certainly people had favorite words to start with, words that would help them figure out the actual word later on. But now they had strategies around those words, and they would get pretty intense. People started looking at the previous words and the frequency of letters. Over 15% of words started with an S. Vowels dominate the second and third letter. Should you skip all correct letters in your second word to give you 5 more letters and try to determine links? Perhaps you'll choose your starting word based on common letters in English words that are both common individually but also in consonant clusters to help reveal huge ranges of possibility. Maybe you'll use your knowledge of spelling conventions and sound patterns. How incredible it is that so much linguistic code-breaking thought would be spent on such a silly little word game. And finally, with all these 5 reasons, we are ready for Wordle to go viral, except of course for the 6th reason. Josh Wardle, who worked at Reddit and Mischief and had a lot of influential tech friends. Yes, sadly, all of the above reasons are merely chaff when it comes down to the fact that Josh knew a bunch of very influential people who liked his game and were willing to promote it. It really is all about who you know, in the end giving us yet another P.T. Barnum-style piece of wisdom. Ultimately, what led Wordle to its success? Well, it's a socially driven fad. There you are. Video over. A fad is intensely followed for a short period of time, rises quickly, and then falls once novelty is gone. Think Beanie Babies, Pet Rocks, #Follow Friday, and Troll Dolls. Trends, on the other hand, stick around and get stronger over time. They have explainable rises versus a fad's overnight success. Think social networks, mobile devices, science-based medicine, all trends. Puzzles are something that have a semi-natural tendency to become fads, as people enjoy figuring things out, but once they have an answer, well, the answer is known. Additionally, our current world is unique in that it consumes more written words than any other generation at any other time in history. We write and read a lot of text every day. Texting and emails, subtitled Korean horror films, Discord and Twitter. Our world is one that is inundated with text, and most people prefer to read a text than talk to someone. Yes, people read fewer books, but people read more words than ever before. Whereas 200 years ago, no average person could rightly be expected to know the conventions of formal writing, today the average person has a pretty strong understanding of linguistics comparably. Mass communication has also created a greater awareness of conventions. Consider how differently you might type on Reddit versus Twitter versus a text to your partner, and how even that has changed since AOL speak to the modern world. We've gone from medieval manuscripts with no standardized spelling to the printing press that had to create rules so the widest number of people could read the books, to the global internet and the widely understood conventions that allow for a game like Wordle to even exist. More text than ever before, more easily understood by more people than ever before, and suddenly a game like Wordle can become the world's biggest fad game in a matter of months. Fads aren't inherently bad. Think of the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, but they are always short-lived. Wordle tweets saw over 6.6 trillion views, 58 million likes, and 9 million replies. At the peak of Wordle's popularity, there were 500,000 tweets a day about the game. And then the New York Times bought it. Why would the newspaper that has won the most Pulitzer Prizes in history, the third largest newspaper in the United States, a fifth-generation family-run news conglomeration that once covered the American Civil War, that once exposed Boss Tweed and Tammany Hall, that helped codify freedom of press in the Supreme Court, that published the Pentagon Papers, why would this paragon of news want to buy this little browser game for a reported $3 million? Well, that, my friends, it won't surprise you. It's just reach. Good old-fashioned reach. The same as Facebook buying Instagram or WhatsApp, the New York Times wants access to the millions of potential customers in what they believe is their key demographic. People who like words and think they're smart. It makes so much sense, as buying ads to reach those millions of players would cost significantly more than just buying Wordle outright. And the New York Times has a goal. They want 10 million subscribers by 2025. That's the goal of buying Wordle. We'll revisit that number later in this video so you can decide if the Wordle purchase was successful. Just remember that they want 10 million by 2025. And there's plenty of ways they can monetize Wordle to recoup the $3 million they paid. They can make the game pay to play, a premium model. They can go freemium, where the game has ads and you can pay to remove them, or pay to play an additional subscriber-only game every day parallel to the original game. Or just allow you to play 2 or 3 games a week, 7 games for subscribers. Or maybe they just load it full of advertising with dozens of ads shown every single time you play the game. Or even just throw it behind the New York Times subscriber paywall as a value add to their subscriber base. Plus, Wordle is really basic. It's simple, it's easy to understand, easy to pick up and play. It only takes a few minutes of time and generates a lot of discourse. And as far as the New York Times was concerned, it was growing leaps and bounds. At the start of November 2021, the game was played by just 90 people. By the start of 2022, that number was 300,000, increasing to 2 million soon after. This coincided with a plethora of new games in a genre called hyper-casual. Hyper-casual games are minimalistic, free-to-play, and very easy, made popular by games like wood turning, perfect cream, and ASMR slicing. It's one of the largest and fastest growing subgenres in all of gaming, representing 45% of all mobile game downloads in just 5 years. And while it may only represent 1% of all in-app purchases, players don't usually want to pay anything to play these games, it's already the 4th largest ad revenue genre in all of mobile gaming, and it's growing, on average, 50% year over year. That's a big deal, and certainly something that caught the New York Times' eyes as much as anything else. they could own a demographic-heavy, super fad, famous across the world, that could easily be monetized for the next decade to generate huge sums of money for basically nothing. What killed Wordle? What leads us to this video's thesis? What leads to the end of the entire thing? Just as there were several reasons that came together in a perfect storm to create the ultra fad of Wordle in the first place, several things came together to kill it. First, as with any very popular game, there were knockoff games within weeks. You could choose to play Wordle, or you could play Quordle, or Nerdle, or Hurdle, or a dozen others, all aping the original, but introducing some quirk in gameplay that would titillate and excite, or perhaps just confuse long enough to get a few ad impressions. This started to fragment the audience, as not everyone liked Wordle, they just wanted to be part of the community that was solving puzzles together. Once that fragmented, it signaled the beginning of the end. This was followed by significant management missteps by the New York Times. First, they chose that third monetization option, loading the game to the gills with ads, literally an ad after every button press, plus ads before and after each game, plus more! It's a truly awful user experience. I encourage you to avoid it at all costs. They also took away the Wordle archive, meaning there was no more history of words. There were no more previous puzzles. That's not huge, but again, this game was killed by small cuts, not decapitation. They also added in seasonal changes to the game, to a game that thrived because of its simplicity, and suddenly it's changing. Small changes, but changing. And finally, they started selling user data. Of course, they sold the crap out of user data from anyone playing Wordle because they had a $3 million investment to recoup. This was all happening while people were uncertain about the future of Wordle. Was the New York Times going to stuff it behind a paywall? It made sense. All their other games are behind a paywall. Plus, why else would you buy the game if not to stuff it behind a paywall? These rumors drove away users who didn't want to become attached to a game that might disappear any day. For those who are curious, it did pay out remarkably well for the Times. They had 10.5 million subscribers in 2022, beating that 10 million by 2025 by, well, 3 years and 500,000 subscribers. It was a very good deal, and I'm sure they're exceptionally pleased with the decision. That's on top of the likely millions of dollars generated by the absurd amount of ads present in the game and the user data sales. This was a resounding success. I mentioned that fads go up quick and fall as quickly, and I imagine that this was considered a well thought out gamble by the Times. Because yes, virality itself is the fourth reason that Wordle started to die. It was viral and explosive, and therefore its death would be quick and quiet. It was written into the stars the day that Wordle became a viral fad. But I want to give my fifth reason that Wordle failed to Wordle itself. Over time, the words became harder, or became words that people didn't know. Words like swill, gawky, knoll, shire, and banal. Words that included multiples of the same letter, like Abby. These led people to lose, and losing is demotivational. You might be okay losing your streak once, but once you get onto a losing streak, you might just quit the game entirely. Quitting was made easier when you would see people actively cheating to get the word list ahead of time, or looking up the answer on the internet so they could keep their streak going for imaginary internet points. And right after the Supreme Court ruling in 2022, the word fetus showed up, driving a lot of people away because of the implied politicization of their easy, lazy word game. All of that aside, of course, the game is very monotonous. It's always the same and it always will be, and that means it's kind of boring. Once you've played a few rounds, once there's no community engaging you, once all your friends have muted Wordle on Twitter, once your Discord has blocked the green square emoji, what reason do you have to play anymore? Thanks so much to my patrons who made this video possible, and I'll see you on the next one.